good day. This is a bit of a emotional topic for me. It's because I went through the trauma of gang stalking. I want to just... The reason I want to start talking about it now is I finally have... my father's finally said that he would agree to talk about all the crazy synchronicities and all the crazy stuff that happened right before I was gang stalked. And everything from Lori Venning trying to get us $100 million, or I believe it was more than that. There's a few different kind of things going on there. And him trying to dominate me, and I wouldn't allow it. I'm going to get more into this stuff later. My dad and I are going to sit down and talk about it because he was there, and I didn't want to start talking about this kind of stuff until I had a witness that was willing to talk about it. And it was a trauma for him because he went through it in a way also with me. Maybe not as intense, obviously. He didn't get gang stalked himself, but through me, he went through some traumatic time where he couldn't even... he didn't know if he was going crazy. Because, if the whole system calls your son crazy, even though you saw all the crazy synchronicities that lined up to that, then what are you going to think yourself, right? So he's finally willing to speak on this, so I wanted to start to just even set up that conversation a little bit. Lori Venning was... well, first of all, what is gang stalking? I'll tell you what it is, and then we'll go on to my story. But what happens is when there's certain people, there's actual programs in the Canadian government. I think it's called INSET is the name of the program, and it actually is the same kind of thing the Gestapo did in USSR, where they put spies. Like 1 in 6 people were Soviet spies in the USSR, right? But then they've also became these tactics if they had no way to get rid of people because they weren't doing anything illegal, but they were a problem for their money or for their ideology they're trying to push through, like a dissonant. Like, these are the kind of people that they gang stalk, right? And what happens is, it's really, they follow you around, they come into your house, they move things around, they attack your phone, do weird things on your phone, they do all this crazy stuff to you, so that you're like, what is going on? And then you tell somebody about it, and then they think you're crazy, and then they have you put in the insane asylum. And you gang stalk somebody so that people think they're crazy, and you lock them up for their craziness. And this is how you take the rights away from somebody, so they can do things to a person that you cannot usually do, because our Mental Health Act is messed up, and this is a continuation of the witch hunt, right? Anytime, or any of these times in the past that they had to get rid of a certain part of society, but they can't kill them, they can't lock them up because they're not doing anything illegal, they're righteous people, right? And so they do all these tactics. And if I had known what gang stalking is, I would have looked into it, researched, and realized what I was in the middle of. However, instead I went into fear. I didn't have enough spiritual teachings about spiritual warfare at the beginning of it, and if I had, I wouldn't have gone into fear, and likely some of the things wouldn't have happened. But I'm not going to be Captain Hindsight here. I want to everything that happened for a reason, because I met some people inside. I was gang stalked to the point, and my dad was involved with all this. Like, he was right in the midst of it, so we were both in a way kind of gang stalked. I got the worst of it from the local people and like the criminality of our local area. But my dad saw the shit happen, right? So and I went into locked me into the insane asylum for 12 days. They came out to my house and trespassed on my property, came into my house illegally. And my dad said I was fine. He was on the phone with me and like backed up that I was fine. I said I was fine. They raided me instead because they realized that they couldn't do anything because they had another person saying I was fine, right? And so, so I got locked up. They raided me. They did a whole bunch of crazy shit. Like they cut they did stuff cops shouldn't have done. First of all, they walked through my entire place and made me. They were threatening me. They took away a camera of accountability away. And I know what these guys have done. So right then I knew if they had shot me then, that I would just be another crazy person that fought the cops and they had to shoot them, right? So I was like, fucked. Right then I realized who the boss was. And they made me walk through my entire facility in my basement stuff. They even went and talked in my basement, made me stand outside. They went and talked inside. They were doing all these weird things. It was so fucking weird, right? Then they got after they went through, they got a warrant 2 hours later, after they already walked through my place. They locked me up overnight, froze my ass off. Then a few days later, they came after me again. The fucking police picked me up for another mental health call, but they did this time on Baker Street. I talked to 3 different psychiatrists, and they all cleared me. Again, gone, right? I go home again. I watch these cops are been following me around for a while, bothering me. These are the kind of things where why would the cops do that? Well, okay. The cops came, the RCMP came to my house a few days later and picked me up. And this time, they came in, I had no choice. They grabbed me and put me into the mental hospital for 12 days, even though I'd already cleared it with all these people. And I spent 12 days in there, and this is why it was meant to be. I ran into another guy that has been gang stalked so many times because he's a fundamental Christian. He was so fundamental that me and him had some kind of falling out, but because we were so loving, both of us could always get past it. And he was, he'd been through hell and back, and so has his son. His son was also bipolar, but his son was telling me about his visions of speaking with God and stuff like that, and I realized if he had a person to speak with about more esoteric spiritual psychology and consciousness, then we could have worked through that spiritual crisis that he was going through. And it may not have been of a crisis if he knew how to interpret what he was going through. And I realized that they were both such big-hearted people and little warriors. They locked him up because he had this bipolar thing or a vision that some shit was going down. So he went out and he fucked up the drug dealer's car in the trailer park, and I don't know, whatever it was. It was to do with meth and heroin or whatever, right? So they locked him in the mental institution, and he was just I realized is he was a problem for the criminals, right? As I was, because at the time my father and I were filling out paperwork to cease and desist 2 legal cannabis companies because of stolen intellectual property. And it's all affiliated with these gangs that have been moving product through our neighborhood for 30, 40 years, so that's that spot where the black market went into the white market. They don't want to talk about. So obviously I'm a targeted individual because these people that work with all the police, the cops that came in and got me were talking about they're affiliated, and Tim from Sweetgrass told me all of his affiliation with police years ago because he's a loudmouth. So I know what this is how gangs work. Whenever there's communities that have tons of cash moving through it, the cops blackmail these people, right? And Tim got caught in the fields, and with a bunch of people and stuff like that, and there's things that happen, and then all of a sudden he rose up after that. Interesting, right? So that's why I'm somebody that has always been saying what I'm doing, you know, especially, you know, let's say the last 7 years, I've been very much trying to be a righteous person in any way that I can. And because they messed with me and what I was doing and all the stuff and all their stuff, then I was coming after them. That's how it works. This is legal. That's how. So, mental institution. Anyways, back to the mental institution. So I was in there, and I realized this guy was actually, like, for me, I felt right away how true it was. What he had, like, I could tell that he was in the midst of, like, a gang area. And then there was another guy in there with him that was also a Christian guy, big into the Bible. We, like, talked so much about the Bible. That's where I kind of, like, discovered a love for the Bible in there. And he told me about all the dark stuff that was around this other guy, right? And he was like, yeah, this stuff's, like, true, right? So then, while we were in there, he's talking to one of his neighbors, and there's a murder, right, like, affiliated with this guy. And then, and you know, then I realized he was actually fighting against something evil, you know? He just didn't know how to deal with it. It was telling him something, he just didn't know how to interpret it. Because something happened, you know? And I realized there was, at the time, because this is right where we were getting a ton of solar flashes, we were getting a ton of information. This is like a big download time. That was the switch over from pretty much I was in there January 5th, 2021, so that means that, you know, I was right after the switch over of the stars, right? It's when a ton of people woke up right then. It was a big awakening. A lot of people went through some amazing spiritual gifts were dropped into their lap like that, you know, and I realized that a lot of these people are people that are just getting, like, God is sending them messages. Please step in. It's divine intervention, you know? And people, you can believe in that stuff or not, you know? However, what led me to confronting these people about the strain is very much something that is a little hard for me to understand. So, you know, but when I confronted them, I realized it was true because of how they reacted and how they're still reacting. If it wasn't true, we could have just sat down and talked about it. But you know what? I still have all the evidence to find, you know, to set these guys for what it is. So I'm kind of waiting for the right time, let's say, to bring this back, because I want to see this country straighten up first before I'm, like, because I could see what this. I'm sure I was targeted either by this local gang or this local gang that is affiliated with the communist government, because that's how they use the people, right? They connect to the people that already own the streets, right? And they buy them, they invest in their companies, all this stuff, right? They promise them, you know, things. Also, a lot of people don't realize is that these things are, these people don't really have a choice a lot of the time. They've been blackmailed into their position. And also they know they're dark. A lot of these people know how dark their tactics are, and they don't want to be a target. They don't want to be a target of gang stalking, so they'll happily be involved with the gang stalking rather than be with all the lovely things they're going to give them, right? Along with, you know, the losing their soul, because, you know, we have to become warriors. And one of the guys I was listening to, he's a whistleblower because he was involved with the mind control and gang stalking, which they do it together. It's how you psychologically mess with people. It's not like it's mind control. I mean, they do have technologies for that also, and that is what it is. But what I'm more talking about is they know how to psychologically mess with people, right? and make them do these things. It's been things they've been working on for a while. Anyways, this guy was part of the government who is organized and knowing all their tactics, and he whistleblowed on it, and they gang stalked him, and it still ruined his life, even though he knew ahead of time what they're going to do, you know. So this is a serious tactic, right? And there is people that believe they're being gang stalked when they're not. This is absolutely true. I mean, I've watched videos on it, and I can tell there's people that are struggling. There's two things. One is they are being gang stalked, but then when they finally get their video camera out, they're just pointing it at everybody so they look schizophrenic. Or they are actually dealing with, some kind of pathological paranoia, So, but one thing we have to know is when you see these people all paranoid when they're being gang stalked, right? And maybe you don't, because the whole point of gang stalking is nobody else sees it, because they can't let it be known. It's like, that's the whole point of it, right? If somebody sees it, if they get caught doing it, then it's evidence, and then people believe them, So that's where so we just have to, there is, like I said, the people that, like myself, you err on the side of caution, and people, it looks like paranoia when you're like looking everywhere, but if there's actually a threat, or at least in this case, if was there a threat or not, and that's if I understood that it was gang stalking, I would have been a little less in fear, because I would have known what they were up to, and I could have just been like, I can play this game back. And I did end up playing that game back, and now that's what I've done to my neighbors in a sense. Is like, you guys battled all that stuff that you guys are connected to. I am also letting you all know your names are being written down, all of you that were involved with the witch hunt. My lawyers got all your names. Okay, this is, and we're going to, and I can, anybody that else is that I haven't got their names yet, I can get them, especially if I open a case, right? And I want you to know, some of you have been tricked. Some of you, like my sister and brother, who hadn't seen me in over 6 months, they were told by my neighbors, by people around me, that they didn't know either, but that's how they gang stalk you. They spread message around as if you're dangerous and you're going to go hurting people. And then they tell your parents and all your family, especially, and it's easy to do it to people that aren't really, that are quite introverted and by themselves, and they often do it to very intelligent people, because, or people that have things that better the world. So like, for example, like the people that are bringing out technology that could that competes or frees up the human race, right? Those are the people that will get gang stalked and stuff. And I believe Lori Venning's little $775 million invention was stolen. And I'm gonna get to that story more, but this is how they do it: is they gang stalk, they steal it from them, and as soon as somebody's like, you stole that, and they go for a legal thing, that they're gang stalked, right? And now, people be like, why did people gang stalk you? Well, there's literally the Alberta, we were in contact with the Alberta pharmaceutical, I forget the name of it. We'll go through over this with my dad, but Lori Venning, was the pharmaceutical, Alberta Pharmaceutical and Health, right? We're trying to give us millions of dollars to bring our strains to end different mushroom strains, and to study them for mental health and other reasons, right? And so if that whole thing was real, and Lori Venning just, he seems like a crook to me, and to be honest, the way he ended things, he like told me what was going to happen to me, and it happened. So that guy's definitely, it's hard for me to know, he might just be actual dude that wanted to do better for the world, but still had such a big ego that he wouldn't fuck with somebody like with me, unless I was dominated, or he literally is one of the evilest people in Canada, and he's pushing, and that's what I really believe, because he's also involved with the Native network, and he's indoctrinating the natives in Canada, as far as I'm concerned, creating more resentment in their hearts. And that points again at something really dark behind what they're doing. So that's what witchery is, like black magic is biological, chemical, and psychological. The one energy, to me, I can be proved wrong. Actually, I won't even say it, but that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's what they can do, and that's witchery. They also use, in gang stalking, they use very attractive women, and they're often like escorts. And they're escorts that often know that they can't leave what they're doing, because if they do, they will be gang stalked, right? And so actually 75% of people who are gang stalked are women, and it's a lot to do with the sex trade. So when you think these people, like escorts, are doing it because they want to, a lot of them are like, really smiling and pretending like they're liking what they're doing. These high-end escorts like my ex. However, they probably have no choice but to stay in the game, because they've seen what happens to people that mess with them. Well, that's my first video on what kind of happened with me and what gang stalking is, and yeah, I'll continue on the story as we go. Maybe the next video will be, I'll do one more video on this, and then hopefully I'll get together with my dad and we can actually sit down and go in depth about all the crazy synchronicities and all the stuff that happened that led up to this, and that was like the true magic. But the true magic led to the demons coming, because when you get closest to the light, you're actually closest to the darkness, because they prey on these kind of people, because these people can change things, and they don't want that. Much love, and God bless.